I'm ready. Sam, can you confirm? Yep, there we go. Streaming live. You're ready.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is a combination workshop and public meeting for the Albany City Planning Board. We have two parts, actually three parts to the meeting. One is the workshop. The second is a potential consent items that if there's no one objecting, we may go right to consent to approve those. And then the third would be a public meeting. I'll first articulate the rules of procedure for the workshop. The planning board workshop is for the board members to see new projects or projects they've seen before that might have advanced or have changes. And the conversation is between the planning staff and the planning board. There's no interaction with the public or the applicants. That would come in a regular planning board meeting in the future when workshop projects are ready to be considered. From time to time, for clarification, the board may ask the staff to check in with the applicants if there's some item that might need immediate clarification to get a better understanding. But generally, this is a conversation between the staff and the board. So we'll begin with that. And Brad, can you put up the first item on the agenda for the workshop? Okay, this is 257 South Pearl Street. It's the proposal by the Capital City Rescue Mission to expand a group living facility and by constructing approximately 31,000 square foot addition to the existing building. We have seen this project initially last year for quite a while, quite a number of sessions, and it's coming back now for a first look at potential changes or additions to the project. So Brad, you want to go through this?
Yeah, next slide. Okay. Yeah, so some of this, was just we were looking for some clarity from the applicant in terms of how the proposed addition or new building is going to relate to the existing use there. Currently, the applicant did provide the floor plan showing the interrelation between the two, as well as just kind of clarifying the scope of the expansion as proposed to the existing facility. The existing building, you can see it in the white there. We do have the full floor plan set that should be available to you in the Dropbox. I just took a screen capture of the ground floor. Essentially, the existing building is 1 to 2 stories. It's about 34,000 square feet. The applicant has identified, all of the various rooms and uses within the 2 floors. It doesn't have a count on the dormitory beds on the plan for the existing as compared to the new. So that's something we will follow up to just clarify. But the proposed addition is it's a 4-story building. It's 37,500 square feet. And proposed are 69 dormitory beds. As the applicant has stated, this would seek to accommodate people who may be residing there now that do not have full dorm or bed accommodations, as well as a number of sort of amenities that would be available to them through the addition. The applicant also did clarify the plan for the fourth floor, which on the original plan set had shown as just a future area to be programmed. It looks like they are looking to install housing there as well, although it seems to be more of a sort of suite oriented unit living style as opposed to the dormitory type residency. So, I mean, certainly we could follow up on that, or if the board, wants to hear any information from the applicant on the specifics of that. But, just from my perspective, pointing out, how the two interrelate, and, we finally just have the full scope of, the 4 floors and how they're being programmed.
Do you have shots of the other floors and some elevations as well, or is that still in a conceptual stage?
I didn't include them in the PowerPoint. They are available in the Dropbox. I suppose we could pull them up if we needed to, but you could also, revisit those individually should you choose on your home PCs.
Okay.
I guess next slide. So just looking at the site plan, and I used this was the one that was in color, so you can see the footprint of the addition is towards the right of the yellow area on the screen there. You can kind of see the dividing line towards the middle of the page. The existing facility is a little bit more sprawling, and again, lower level, 1 to 2 stories. So while the footprint of the new building is smaller, it's an additional 2 stories. So the size is about similar or a little bit larger than the existing 2 floors. And then, going through the site plan, and I had emailed this out earlier today to the applicant's representative, just going through the development plan standards. There are a few things on both the site plan and the floor plan, or excuse me, the elevations that we had comments on with respect to the code. The site plan ones are similar to some you've seen on other projects. The requirement for amenities and tree plantings, as well as just a clarification of bicycle parking. And as you'll see in one of the future slides, just hashing out the actual vehicular parking calculation requirement for the project as well. Next slide. These are the elevation drawings, the new building, and this is seen from Trinity Place. Is the building in the middle here. There's a couple of things that come to play here. We have it is located, I believe, in or adjacent to a historic district. It has been before the Historic Resources Commission for consideration. And we also do believe, given the scale and scope of the project, that the form-based design standard should apply as well. And some of these, the 5 points we had listed here are sort of a mix of our general design standards as well as some of the form-based standards, just things that we would like to see the applicant consider as they move forward with their project. Probably the most significant there is, differentiating the ground floor of the building from the upper floors. And typically in the form-based zones, we do seek to have a minimum 13-foot height on the ground floor, as well as the minimum transparency requirements. We do generally look for 30% of the facade to be transparent. There is some flexibility built in on that, but the current proposal looks to be quite a bit shy of that. So I think we'd like to see some larger windows with headers that maybe give more of an appearance similar to some of the older style buildings that you see in that area.
Brad, on that slide, 2 quick questions. The first is, did you say that the Historic Resources Commission has seen the plans, or Bill seen the plans?
They have. I don't know that they've endorsed at this point, but they have. It has been to them for at least a preliminary review.
And this is a 4-story building, and I see that there is a slight elevation climb that makes it look like 3 stories. So what is the first story kind of on the bottom there? And I'm trying to figure out what those 3 little items are on the elevation itself.
I guess I would have to, yeah, I see what you're saying. And there were a few different elevations in the file. Maybe I picked the wrong one to do a screen capture. But yeah, it certainly looks like we're looking at a 3-story building here. So I don't have an immediate explanation for that.
Okay, so I would suggest then that is it easy to bring up the Dropbox to see the current proposal?
I can try. Let me see if I screen share here. Sam, could you give me the ability to share my screen?
Should be good now.
Okay, looks like we're in business.
Yeah, so these are the most recent set from February 1st. It looks like there is a grade change going from Trinity to Pearl. That
Right.
may be the explanation for why why it would appear as a 3-story building on Trinity Place.
Okay, so that was the accurate one.
Well,
and the latest one.
I'm a bit confused, admittedly. Because there are, the floor plans show a full 4 floors. So, I mean, that's the only immediate explanation I would have, is that one of those floors is half below grade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like you can see it there on the larger drawing. That is the 4th level.
So from a perspective of fitting in with the existing buildings on Trinity Place, certainly that would be welcomed.
Okay.
All right, Sam, you want to go back to the PowerPoint? Thanks. And you could, next slide. The applicant had submitted a request for an administrative adjustment for the off-street parking requirement. We had to do a little bit of a calculation to figure this out, because there is an existing building, and the parking requirements apply differently to when we're dealing with the existing site versus a new building. So we did take a look at the calculation for the existing building and how that would compute out for the 34,000 square feet. If it were built today, it would require 57 parking spaces. It would be eligible for a couple of the credits there, the proximity to transit and counting the on-street spaces around the perimeter. So the adjusted requirement would be 30 parking spaces, and they currently have 19 on site. So the current deficiency is about 11 parking spaces, which isn't really an issue, because again, this building was built prior and would have been sort of grandfathered or subject to whatever allowances were available at that time. However, the new building or the expansion would require parking commensurate with the additional ground floor area, 40 to 37,000 square feet. That would be 63 parking spaces. Again, not counting the on-street, because again, that's counted towards the initial calculation, but we are counting again the transit for the new 63 spaces. That would reduce it to 50. There is a reduction due to the new building construction. 9 of the existing on-site spaces would be removed as a result of the new construction. So the deficiency overall there would be 59 parking spaces required. So really what that tells us is that, it was outside of the range of the allowable administrative adjustment that I could grant as chief planning official in a form-based district. It is up to 50% that the chief planning official could reduce. So I guess what I suggested in my letter is that they potentially look at a transportation demand management option for this project. I think it's going to be difficult for them to meet the requirement on site. And I think in all fairness, we can probably all agree that there's, apart from employees, not a lot of people that are going to be driving to the location. So, the full requirement there, while it's based on a standard calculation, may not be exactly what the true need is for this use. So, we'd ask the applicant to go back and take a look at that and see how they might be able to compute out the number of employees, the true demand, and what they could strategize to come up with for a solution to at least anticipate that demand. Next slide. And I felt it necessary to, we had a lot of comments in the record early on, supporters of the mission and all that they do. But there was some press more recently, and a letter that we received and a number of elected officials received relative to some concerns that related or had been attributed to the mission from some members of the Giffen school community, parents or former parents, as well as the county legislator and the council member there. So, I'm quite confident the board has, had the opportunity to see and review the letter, as well as some of the articles in the press. And I think it's probably appropriate for the board to consider in any way that, that there's anything in those letters that, that may need to be looked at or considered, and at least responding to some of those concerns that were raised. And I did just want to, and if you go to the next slide, Sam, just again, a lot of this or these sorts of comments would be, tailored more towards the conditional use permit standards. The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit for the use that's being proposed, in addition to the development plan review, some of the standards with the elevations and the site plans that I walked you through. So 2 separate approvals there, as well as the certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Resources Commission. But the conditional use permit and the development plan review are what is within the jurisdiction of the planning board. And it sounded like a lot of the kind of the comments we received were in the vein of some of the conditional use permit considerations. So I did want to just remind the board of what the standards are. And I think that's all I had on this particular project. If anyone has any questions for me or any general comments, feel free.
Brad, in reference to the conditional use permit standards, are we also having to consider major development plan standards as well?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I did not put those standards on the screen, but I tried to rather quickly, and I can certainly copy the board on the correspondence that I sent to the applicant, but some of the standards some of the deficiencies that I had walked through before with the parking and the elevations and some of the site related issues, would certainly be relevant to those development plan standards.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Board members, questions to Brad?
Not a question. Well, maybe a question. Just thinking about the parking standards. It would be good to know how many, and the fact that the project doesn't meet them. It would be good to know how many employees there are as compared to potential, tenants or people who will be using the services at the location. I think that would allow us to make a better judgment there.
Yeah, exactly.
Also be curious what the current utilization of the existing parking is.
Yeah, good point.
I'm taking notes, and I think I see the applicant taking notes too, so.
Chris, Grenisa, anything that you have questions about?
Well, not for me.
I think this is, the proposal is literally doubling the facility. I would like to get a clear idea Brad, about the number of beds that would be for sheltering, where I understand that folks could stay overnight, but then during the day they need to leave, versus how many beds are for permanent, or not permanent, but I guess transitional housing, if there is any.
Okay, yeah, and it's been a little, it's a little bit an oddity in a sense, because the applicant has certainly presented it, these are people that are residing there on an overnight basis, particularly during code blue situations already. So, I mean, there's certainly been an assertion that the impact is limited by the nature of it. It's really just providing them with better accommodations. Although I've also pointed out, it certainly could be viewed from the perspective of, the code blue and that initial expansion that took place. Really, I don't know that ever came before a board. It wasn't represented in a physical development project. So to some extent, depending on how you look at it, you can come into different conclusions as to how much of an expansion is truly proposed. But certainly, yeah, I mean, I did have the initial question about just clarifying how many existing dorm beds are there now, versus what's being proposed. So we can follow up on that.
Also, I'm also wondering, I know that there's a kind of a coalition of organizations that work with people who are homeless, and I'd be interested to know how the city mission connects with the coalition, and how they coordinate services. And I know that one of the concerns that has been raised a number of times was the issue of drugs on the street and concerns about needles in the street near the school and kids being exposed to that. And I would be interested to know how the mission works with or treats or refers folks who might have drug addictions, and how that is handled.
If you don't mind, I'll just have a caveat that to the extent that information is available and the applicant's willing to share it and it doesn't impede any privacy or any special or protected characteristics of the clients.
Well, I'm not asking for individuals. I'm just asking generally how they deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we just need to be careful. We're not directly attributing something to the mission that, there's not a factual basis for that. So I think, that might be something where we could, follow up with the appropriate agencies and see if that is, documented in any way. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly the operational characteristics of the mission, would be interesting to find out if they do have an operational plan or anything to that effect that could be shared. I know there is some regulation through, I think, the state OTDA that, we could potentially reach out to that agency as well.
Okay. Anything else? Any other comments, questions by the board? Okay, we'll move on. Brad, is there another workshop item on the agenda?
We have 2 additional workshop items.
Okay.
Actually, I should have mentioned, I put the staff's recommended actions on the slides. I thought that might be helpful, just for consideration. And in this case, there are at least 2 entities involved with the seeker review, the Planning Board and the Historic Resources Commission. So it probably wouldn't make sense to do a coordinated review, in which case, my recommendation would be for the Planning Board to be the lead agency. So I think, it would be fine to make a simple declaration during the workshop session tonight, declaring yourselves as lead agency. I guess I would want to confirm with council that we can do that in a workshop session, or if we should come back and do that. But
Unfortunately, I think it is something that has to be voted on, but if you wanted to make the declaration of the type of action, if this is an unlisted action, and then at a subsequent meeting, a resolution can be passed for voting on the declaration of lead agency for a coordinated review of unlisted action.
Okay, so Martha, can you explain a little bit more? We can declare us as a lead agency during the workshop and then ratify it later. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't. So during the workshop, the board and staff can identify the type of action that the project is under seeker, and I believe it would be an unlisted action. And then it would have to be at a subsequent properly noticed public meeting of the board, or perhaps on a consent agenda, where the board actually votes on declaring themselves lead agency for a coordinated review of the unlisted action. And then there's usually a resolution that's adopted at that time.
Okay.
yeah,
But
Alan, I think we might want to just defer generally, because I mean, I was under the presumption it was a type 1 action. So maybe
Okay.
we should confer on our end, and we'll have both those items be addressed at a future session.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, thanks.
Yep. Sorry for the confusion.
That's
Next
all right.
up. Okay, so next up, this is an application that we've received. Zach Powell had a couple of written correspondence with the applicant to get some documents that we needed. We do have a full submission now from the Legal Aid Society to advance their parking lot proposal at 69 to 85 Sherman Street. It's a mixed-use community urban zoning district, and you may remember a while back we had the Common Council passed an ordinance that came through this board for a recommendation relating to opening up off-site parking solutions opportunities for certain uses in the MUCU zone. This is one of those that falls under this proposal, and the applicant did also go before the Common Council and receive a rezoning of several of the parcels in the 65 to 85 range to be included within the MUCU zone. I believe it was a split zone boundary before. So I guess next slide. So this is the location. sorry, I didn't also highlight legal aid on the map, but it is included in that row of buildings there on Central Avenue in the front. I believe it's the red brick one sort of in the middle, a couple down from the white building, which you also saw for a proposed U-Haul storage application a couple meetings ago that'll be coming back to you shortly. The properties in orange are, as the site that we're talking about, would be consolidated and turned into a parking lot. I believe the two buildings that are shown are no longer there. They were demolished. There was actually one of those had come in as a demolition review with their application, but I believe it has since been demolished through an emergency action.
Yes, that's true. I've been down that street a couple of times.
Next slide. And really, I try to keep it simple here, but this is the proposed, parking lot as it's been scoped out on the right side here. Pretty straightforward in terms of what they're proposing. In review of the plan, there were a number of things that jumped out that may require a waiver before this board, or things the board may want to consider. Again, the requirement for the street amenities, furniture. This is something just a little bit of an aside, but just so the board knows, this has been coming up frequently, and we have heard in some cases that our Department of General Services is not necessarily looking for the scale and amount of street furniture that our code is requiring. So it is something that we intend to bring before the Common Council for an amendment that at least provides some flexibility for us to opt out of that provision without a waiver where it's appropriate. So that would be one. The code also speaks to the minimum number of curb cuts or access locations that's reasonable to provide access. There are two-way curb cuts proposed here. I certainly think that could be found to be reasonable, but I did want to point that out. The board may choose to inquire, with the applicant as to whether they've looked at an alternate configuration that maybe limited that to one curb cut access location. The code also does have a provision that I do believe would require a waiver in this circumstance, that when the site is adjacent to a residential zoning district, which some of the site is to the rear and to the side, the parking spaces should not be located within 10 feet of the front lot line. Clearly, the front lot line here runs along the sidewalk in the front. So if that were to be applied, it would essentially be taking out the entire front row of parking, which, I'm going to suspect that the applicant may choose to pursue a waiver on that account. Additionally, we do ask for some type of fencing or screening along the frontage of parking lots such as this. I may have overlooked it on the plan, but I don't think I saw that. There are three options that can be allowed: a masonry wall, a decorative wrought iron style fence with pillars, or a continuous line of shrubs with a certain spacing that's set forth in the code. So the applicant could, amend their plans to include that, or seek a waiver from that provision. From a staff perspective, I think we certainly would like to see some screening proposed there. Additionally, there is a provision in the updated ordinance that in many districts, there is a requirement for 30% vegetative coverage on development sites. In the case of the MUCU district, it is a greatest degree practicable requirement. I do believe they are a bit below 30% here, and I'm not necessarily advocating for that requirement in this case, but I did want to bring it to the board's attention that that's something they may want to consider, whether that's been considered or implemented to the maximum degree practicable. And then finally, quite a simple requirement, I think, and probably relatively easy to meet, but I do believe they meet the requirement for at least one tree island to be included within the delineated parking area. So that's all I had on this project, but I'm happy to answer any questions of the board.
Board members, any questions?
Did we cover street trees as part of the list there? I don't recall. Are they required?
They would be required, one per 35 feet on center spaced. I'd have to go back and look at the plans. That may be proposed, which is why I did not list it as a deficiency.
Okay.
But I looked at this a week or so ago, so I don't have it fresh in my mind.
Okay. I think that'd be important just to soften up the issue of a new parking lot of this size in what is a mixed use and partially residential neighborhood. And how about parking maximums? Would that apply here since they're not renovating the building?
Well, to answer your last question, Martin, I did check and there are street trees provided as required on the plan. So we should be all set with that. I have not looked at the parking maximum calculation on this. It's a little bit convoluted because again, there is they do have an existing parking lot across the street that does serve their use to some extent. I can look at that and, they may be to some degree sharing some of this parking with other users.
Okay.
So I can certainly inquire about that, but I will make a point to follow up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Speaking about street trees, Brad, this is a suggestion that is not only specific to this project, but maybe to others too, where street furniture issues are of concern. Perhaps one thing that can be done, until, the waiver issue gets changed, hopefully at Common Council, is that perhaps we could, instead of, requiring street furniture, is to take a certain equivalent of street trees, and plant them in other locations in the city where they could be very helpful at all of the things that trees are good for in urban areas, increasing the air quality and decreasing heat. These could be put in other playgrounds, perhaps in parks that don't have a lot of vegetation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it was, we can look into that. I think it was one thing that we were considering, do we want to, if we kind of provide an opt-out for the requirement, do we still want to capture that in some form that it can be, provided in an off-site location where the city may have that need. We're doing a little bit of a delicate balancing act here because, as you know, the Common Council had also passed the ordinance with the waivers. So I think we're just trying to be as transparent as we can and get everything out there, and we'll fix them as we go forward. So.
Okay. As far as the screening on the front goes, my preference would be either some kind of a low wall or fence, or a combination of low wall and fence rather than shrubbery, because it's an open area and it's in a residential, adjacent to residential areas, and the trash, from Central Avenue gets blown over there, and getting, keeping it clean and out of shrubbery will be a real bear. It'll probably be, even though more expensive to begin with, probably a lot less maintenance in the future.
And I think, Al, that's a great suggestion. And since I have the plans up in my other window here, I am now seeing a decorative wrought iron style fence. So I think you've got your wish already, and I misled you all. So
excellent.
Any other questions from the board? Okay.
All right. On to the next one.
Will we see this one in our regular meeting in the future?
Yeah, I suspect this will be on the next agenda. We have referred out to departments for comments, so we'll see, where we are, and we'll make a point to follow up regarding the the maximum parking and some of these other items we pointed out. And yeah, probably the next meeting we can bring it up.
Okay. And the next item.
So yeah, the final workshop item is another application we received that most likely would be on the upcoming agenda as well. Would be I apologize for the honking horn if you can hear it. There's nothing I can do about that. 159 First Street. It's a proposed conversion of a townhouse from 2 to 3 units. If you go to the next slide, get a picture. So it's at 159 First Street. It's the yellow building there. It does have 2 separate entrances. I'm not entirely sure how it's configured now, if it's 1 unit on the bottom or and 1 unit on the top 2 floors, or if the top 2 floors are each a unit and the bottom is a unit. But the proposal would be to have 1 unit per floor. And just looking, the immediate surrounding context, the building on the left is a 3-family dwelling and the building on the right is a 2-family dwelling. The next slide will have the floor plans. So these are the proposed floor plans, and as you all are familiar, because we've done a lot of these, there are particular standards that apply to conversions of townhouses. This does appear to meet all of the standards. The one that I believe was a new incorporation in our code revisions was just speaking to the design shall incorporate enclosed area outside of the public right of way for the storage of trash containers. We have some situations with existing buildings that have been previously occupied or converted where they're essentially using all the internal space for separate housing units where the trash really has nowhere to go. People are carrying it through the house. In this case, there is, you see it on the first floor plan. In the rear, there is a provision for some trash containers. I don't know if that really meets the intent of the provision. I think the provision was to have some sort of an area internal to the building, a storage closet of sorts for the trash. But I don't know that the code is explicit on that account. So I suppose that's open for interpretation, but that is what the applicant has proposed. And that's the only standard that I noted this proposal maybe not quite meeting. I guess I would kind of defer to discussion on that point.
Is there a space between the neighboring buildings for the trash to be able to be carried from the back to the front without going through the house?
Believe so. Sam, if you could go back a slide. I mean, it's a pretty tight spot.
Yeah, the one on the right, it's
Yeah.
the right-hand side there, looks pretty narrow.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
There are 2 doors on the ground floor. Do they both go into the ground floor apartment, or is one to a stairway and one to the ground floor apartment?
I mean, the plans may identify that. I would suspect that the basement has a separate entry, either maybe once upon a time it was apartment, or maybe it is configured as an apartment now, and then the upper 2 floors are an apartment, or it could have had a commercial use at some point where that door was.
Okay, yeah, I just looking at the floor plan. Sorry about that. The one on the right actually goes to the basement apartment, and the door on the left goes to the 2 upstairs apartments.
We can certainly follow up with the applicant, get those sorts of clarifications.
I was just thinking in terms of moving the bins through the ground floor. That doesn't look like that's very practical either.
Right, you might have an upper floor tenant who has trash, and then then you're going through the lower floor apartment. Yeah, so I think, yeah, ideally there would be some way to have a storage closet internal
Yeah,
to
the other-
where one could access it.
The other possibilities is obviously wide open spaces to the far right and the far left. So I don't know if there's the possibility of a cooperative agreement or some kind of a easement to allow, a single purpose easement to allow the trash to be carried around the back and through the vacant lots.
Certainly an option. May
Yeah,
or may not be challenging. I don't know.
All of that could be solved with real alleys, and unfortunately, that's one thing we don't have.
I gotta admit, it'll be interesting. You'll have that requirement for the trash for the middle building, but look at the building on the right.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's what we're trying to prevent, I think, to some degree.
Yeah. Maybe they can all agree to put it in the back and have a walk around off to the right of the buildings or something, huh?
Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Cody Davis, the applicant.
I'm sorry, but we're not allowing any comments during the workshop. So you can communicate this to the planning staff.
Okay,
Thanks.
no problem.
So we could follow up and get those answers, but I would assume, this would be appearing on the next agenda. And potentially for action if we can get the trash issue addressed. I don't know if the board has any feelings about, the number of units or anything like that.
I think the units are consistent with that area, threes and twos.
Brad, can you go back to the actual verbiage of that enclosure requirement?
Yeah, I think we're going forward one slide. So it's all the way down at the bottom there. I can read it if you want, but it's item C under number 4.
The way the building is situated, set back from the road, if you created some kind of enclosure right up front, and would that still be, would that be outside the public right of way?
No, the right-of-way line is right along the front of the building. The stoops actually encroach out into the right-of-way. And to be honest, it's something that we try to discourage because again, if you see the condition next door, I mean, even if it is enclosed, it can overflow and it gets smelly, and particularly when that's on public property, we have to be very careful about that sort of thing.
No, understand that.
Okay. So we'll see that one at the next meeting.
Well, that's what we got for the workshop. So we'd be moving on to I think there's a consent item.
Okay, well, let me introduce the meeting. Okay, so we are now moving into the official planning board meeting. And I want to give the members of the public the rules of procedure, and first introduce who is here. We have a full complement of planning board members, which include Glenisa Gayard, Roman Kuchera, Martin Hull, and Chris Ellis, and myself, and I chair the meeting. We also have our corporation counsel, Martha Mahoney, and planning staff members, the planning director, Brad Glass, and helping him is Sam, who is handling technology. Our rules of procedure are that when we review projects, if it's a project that we have not seen yet and it requires a presentation, the applicant will have 10 minutes to present. If it's a project we have seen in the past and it's coming up for consideration, the applicant has 6 minutes to present. The board, planning board members then would have questions to the applicant. And after that, their public comments will be entertained. We ask that anybody who wants to comment, first, as it has been published, you're required to indicate your interest in commenting 24 hours before the planning board meeting. And if you do comment, you will have 3 minutes. If it's a member of the Common Council, because they represent a larger area in the community, they would have 6 minutes to comment. But we do encourage everybody to submit comments in writing, preferably in advance of the meeting, so that it can be reviewed by the planning staff and the planning board and be put on the official record. This will allow the board, the staff, and anybody in the public to be able to access the comments at any time. And it also allows members of the public to expand on their concerns, comments, or support. After public comments, the planning staff then will present its recommendations. And then finally, after that, the applicant will have a few minutes to clarify or any issues that might have come up or correct any factual errors that might have been mentioned during testimony. So the first items that we have are potential consent items, and I'll mention them. These are 875 Broadway, 242 Spruce Street, and 700 Smith Boulevard. So first, what I would first ask is that, has anyone, Brad's signed up in advance to speak on any of those issues, any of those projects?
We don't have anyone signed up to speak.
Okay. So therefore, we can move on the consent agenda. For the 3 projects, again, 875 Broadway, 700 Smith Boulevard, and 242 Spruce Street. Do I have a motion to accept those as the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Glenisa. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Martin Hall. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay,
Aye.
thank you. So the consent agenda passes unanimously. We'll go item by item so that we can review and pass each one individually. The first one is 875 Broadway. This is the construction of an approximately 3,200 square foot building addition. I know the project we've seen this a couple of times, and most recently in our early April meeting. The recommended action here is a negative declaration for the State Environmental Quality Review Act and for the development plan review for approve. So do I hear a motion to accept accept the State Environmental Quality Review Act negative declaration?
Yeah, so
moved.
moved. Second.
Okay. Martin Hull and Roman Pichero. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Second recommended action is approving the development plan. Again, I'll accept the motion. All those in motion to approve the development plan.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Denise, seconded by Roman Pichero. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Moving on, 242 Spruce Street.
Hey, Al, can I just I just wanted to clarify, did everybody vote, or is there, I saw Chris on, but I didn't hear him, and I just want to make sure before I write him down as an affirmative. That
Chris,
he's in fact
you
an
there?
affirmative, he's there.
You okay? Thank you. All right, moving on, we have 242 Spruce Street. In this one, there was one question that was raised by Roland, and I wasn't quite sure if I answered him correctly. But Brad, can you explain the seeker's determination of significance? Does this have to do with the fact that the seeker also would have to be reviewed by historic resources or by the state historic preservation office?
No, I mean, the negative or positive declaration, I believe the general terminology for making that is just called the determination of significance. So it's really the making of the negative declaration is the determination of significance.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same thing as the negative declaration. Okay.
And Al, before you go ahead, I'm just going to ask Sam to go ahead a few slides to this. I put the staff recommendation on the slide, and I wanted you to know that I think since we sent our initial memorandum, here we go, 2 of the department comment letters that were not closed out have been closed out, engineering and water departments. So really the only condition we would be recommending at this point was that the traffic engineering unit endorses the truck routing and maintenance and protection of traffic plan. We fully expect that they will. We've been in coordination. I just don't have that official yet. So really just recommending one condition rather than the original 3.
And that one condition is which one?
It's number 1 on the slide right there.
Oh, the negative deck?
No, that prior to the issuance of a building permit, the truck routing and maintenance and protection of traffic plans shall be endorsed by the traffic engineering unit.
Oh, okay, I see in the 4th recommended action, sorry.
Yep.
Okay. All righty. Okay, based on that alteration, I'll entertain a motion for a negative declaration on the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
So moved.
I'll second it. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Second recommended action is the waiver on the street amenities. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Third recommended action is a waiver on the upper floor transparencies. This has to do with the appropriate fenestration and there have been some staff recommendations that I believe the developer and the staff are working on. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of that.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. And then final recommended actions for on the development plan review, which we have been requested to approve with these conditions. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall revise plans and documents in the satisfaction of the items outlined on the March 22nd, 2002 memorandum of the Department of Water and Water Supply to the satisfaction of the
Point of order, Al. I think
Yeah.
Brad said that two of the items were successfully or adequately addressed, so it's just the one item that would be the condition.
I thought it was only the first one. My mistake. Okay, then the only one that we have to vote on is the last item on that development plan review, which is prior to the issuance of a building permit, the truck routing and maintenance and protection of traffic plans shall be endorsed by the traffic engineering unit. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Second by Glenisha. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is that everybody?
I don't know if Chris responded.
Aye.
Thank you. All righty. Though that item is approved, and glad we had some last minute submissions on that. I'm sorry for the confusion. Okay, the other item on the agenda is 700 Smith Boulevard.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
700 Smith Boulevard. This is one we've seen a number of times. This is the Albany Port District Commission's desire to construct a 19,000 square foot building for heavy commercial services. And the recommended actions is waiver for the sidewalks, and recommended action for us to approve the development plan with a couple of conditions. Before we go on, Brad, has there been any updates on the conditions?
Sam, could you navigate to the recommendation slide? I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go through a few because I didn't know do any of this here.
There we go.
No,
Do these-
the condition, there have been no changes there.
Okay. So for this 700 Smith Boulevard, recommend action to waive the requirement of sidewalks. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Oh, seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Do we have everybody?
Yep.
Thank you. And the final item for this project is a development plan review is to approve with conditions, and the conditions are: prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall revise the plans and documents in satisfaction of the items outlined in the April 1st, 2022 memorandum of the Department of Water and Water Supply to the satisfaction of the Department of Water and Water Supply. And then the second condition is prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the tax lots that comprise the plan, and they're noted here, shall be consolidated. Do I hear a motion to approve with those conditions?
So moved.
I'll second it. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that's approved unanimously. Is there any other business, Brad, to come before the board?
I don't believe there is. I guess one thing to point out, I did see a representative on the call and we apologize to them, but we did have another project originally on the workshop agenda. it was 185 Henry Johnson Boulevard, but that was an error on our part. That's actually a minor development plan, so that doesn't have to come to the planning board. So good news at the end of the day for them, but we did initially, by accident have that on the workshop, but that does not require the planning board review. So that's all I got.
Okay. So there's no other business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Well
moved.
moved. Second.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Good to
much
see you
for
all.
your work on the port project. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Yep, you're
thank you
welcome.
very much.
Yes, thank you.
Have a good night.
Right.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Take care.